Captain's Log, Supplemental. We are currently docked at an automated repair yard at the edge of known space. As we are in the middle of a deep space exploration mission, this seemed to be the most convenient way to make some much-needed repairs, but this has got to be the worst automated system I have ever seen. It asked me to state the nature of my visit, and I said repairs. It somehow interpreted that as that I needed chairs and immediately replicated about a dozen folding chairs. I said repairs again. That time I got the coordinates to several planets that were home to bear-like animals. For the third time, I said repairs. It took a minute, and then it said it was contacting a representative. And to please hold. We have now been waiting for 3 hours while the computer plays this mind-numbing garbage music. Welcome everybody back to Captain's Log Supplemental. We are, as always, a Star Trek Rewatch podcast. We are cruising through Enterprise, and today we have a special guest. Would like to introduce you to the man we know as Chief, also as Sean, but we'll go with Chief. Say hi to everybody, Chief.
Hi.
And of course, Rob joins us as well, as always. Hello. Stanford. Oh, yeah, sorry, I gotta let you talk too. Stanford's bowing out. Chief's gonna take over his role this episode. So, just as a reminder, as always, we appreciate it if you rate the podcast and, of course, share it with everybody you know. The more people we get listening, the better, of course, and we really do appreciate it. I think without any further ado, unless, Chief, you want to kind of tell everybody a little bit about who you are, where you're from, how you know us.
Sure. Obviously, I know Matthew very directly and personally, since he is my son. And I've known Rob for a long time as well, since he is one of Matthew's best friends. And Chris, I don't think you and I have ever met.
I think we've had passing hey there's one time, and that was about it. Okay.
Well, that sounds about right. Anyway, more than happy to go into to admit, I guess I should say, my experience with Star Trek started as a kid. I'm 60. So to me, Star Trek was Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Scott on the afternoon on channel, the local TV station after school. And that's all Star Trek was until I was 17 or 18, whenever the motion picture dropped. So that is the majority of my Star Trek is TOS and TAS. I did watch TAS. I watched The Next Generation as well. And then I tried Voyager, did not like it. I watched the first few seasons of Deep Space Nine and dropped that when they started actually going somewhere. They got that ship and started wandering
when they started
off.
trekking?
Yeah. They actually started trekking, yeah. And I've never, and that's it. I'm completely addicted to Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks, but the other 2 or 3 seasons or series I have never seen any of, including this one.
Well, at least you could fill in our giant Star Trek knowledge gap of TOS and TAS. So I think that's definitely where our experience, the Stanford, Rob, and I are the weakest as far as what we've seen and know from it. So
yeah, happy to help.
Yeah. It does mean we've lost our Voyager expert for the week, though.
I mean, are we missing a Voyager expert? I don't know.
Oh.
Are we missing Voyager, I guess?
Yeah, that's really what I mean, yeah.
Yep.
All right, well, with that, Chief, you want to go ahead and get into the summary?
I will. So this week's episode, so this is actually the second episode of Enterprise I've seen. I did watch the Mirror Universe episode, just out of curiosity to see what they did with it, and well, I'm just going to move into this and not talk about that. And this one was called A Night in a Sickbay? A Night in Sickbay?
A Night in Sickbay, yep.
A Night in Sickbay. And Act 1, I'm going to title Act 1 Stripper Glitter. And as we fade in, everything's blue. And at first I wondered, why is everything blue? And then I realized it's because we were in the champagne room. And we immediately... Oh, go ahead.
It's your inaugural unnecessary decon rubdown scene.
Exactly. And I've heard you guys talk about this, and I'm going to say I didn't think it was quite as bad as you guys made out, but there it was. Enterprise.
To be fair, this was the most clinical of them I've seen.
That is horrifying.
Also, for those of you playing at home, the bingo game for this season, we got both shirtless Bacula and the lengthy decon scene in one go.
I know, man.
I saw the bingo cards that Mariah and Matthew have, and yes, it was quite a good week for that. But we do a slow pan, starting with Hoshi, and then on to T'Pol.
T'Pol.
And then on to Bacula, or Archer, and then panning down, and there's so much fur. And then we pan down, and there's Porthos.
Yeah, let's say a little less fur than Bacula, but he's a good boy, so we'll give it to him.
And for some reason, there is a massive amount of stripper glitter in whatever this
decons, yes.
Whatever this lube they're rubbing on each other. And then at the end of the scene, we find out that things have not gone well on the planet, and Archer is salty about it because apparently he's salty about everything.
Archer is always a salty baby about any type of interaction with anybody else besides humans.
Yes.
I love that he's still mad about this dining snafu.
Yes. And although Hoshi, I think, and T'Pol both try to talk sense into him, he's not buying any of it. And then they're all free to go, apparently having achieved culmination. They are all free to go, except for Porthos, who... At this point, now I have several dogs, and if Phlox comes on and goes, you can all go except for Porthos, who apparently has caught some sort of horrible thing and may die. And they're all like, oh, okay. Sorry, Porthos. Bye. And they pan away, and here's Porthos, who looks like the saddest boy in Starfleet at this point.
Cold, wet dog by himself in the decon room. Poor little boy. He's such a good boy.
It looks so bad. And and then we cut away to, what is this song?
Faith of the Heart.
Faith of the Heart, yes. Which is literally the first time I've seen this intro. And really not much of it stood out to me other than it was a mishmash of various little clips and some horrible, very era-appropriate singing. Except for, I noticed, there's Charles Lindbergh in there, this being the days before everyone realized, hey, that guy was a Nazi. So, yeah. So, and we come back from Faith of the Heart and find out that in the next scene that the reason we went down to talk to these guys is because we needed a plasma injector. And Archer is talking to Trip, and Trip would like 5 plasma injectors, but Archer wants to know if he can get by with fewer because he doesn't feel like dealing with these aliens.
Right. He's in big baby mode, and he doesn't want to talk to them no more.
Yes. In fact, he is very, very salty, and he's going to ask T'Pol to find out just what it was he did that made the aliens so mad. And he did, in fact, sound like a 12-year-old petulant child. It was amazing.
There was so much of it this episode. It's absurd. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a starship captain in any other Star Trek act like Archer does in this episode, but often enough in this series.
Yeah, he often just throws temper tantrums like a toddler.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. It's amazing. And so then he goes to talk to, I guess, Phlox about the dog. Because the dog he wants to check. He wants an update on how Porthos is doing, and Porthos is sick. And Archer says something to the effect of, "We sent the Cartassans." Is that how you say their name? The aliens.
I think it's either Cartassans or Cretassans or something like that.
Something like that. We sent them all of our DNA scans. They should have told me that something down there would make Porthos sick. And he's very upset that they did not warn him that Porthos would get sick. In fact, he is so angry over this, apparently, that he will just start a war about it, he implies.
It's true. I do want to point out we did get a brief water polo scene in between to Paul bearing the news of Porthos peeing on the sacred tree or whatever of the Cretaceans.
Yes.
And Archer going to see Phlox.
Yes.
So that's for you bingo players out there. We got the water polo in.
And
also,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is the most empathetic I've ever been to Archer, because at least this time he's got like a reason for being a jerk to these people.
Because they made his dog sick?
Yeah.
I mean, still though.
Well, I mean, yeah, these aliens aren't responsible for what happens to Archer's dog.
Right. Also, don't bring your dog on a diplomatic mission. That's
exactly
all I'm saying.
right. Yeah,
it is weird.
Yeah, and as we find out later, his reason for bringing the dog along, but we'll get there. So, and my notes at this point are, and again, keeping in mind that I'm new to this show, what is T'Pol wearing? Did they paint that on, and why so?
Yeah, every episode, that's her uniform. It is, it is there to emphasize her assets. I think is the nicest way to put it.
Yeah,
do you know who 7 of 9 is?
I do, and I've heard probably from you guys talking about it, the whole thing about how the reason they've got Jerry Ryan trussed up like that is that because since she was a Borg, she has to have some sort of a life support module. Okay, whatever. George Lucas didn't let Carrie Fisher wear a bra because the concern was that in space, in zero gravity, it would strangle her. That was the reasoning.
Yeah, that was the reason for sure. Yeah, definitely. That was it for sure. Yep. I mean, it's like Quentin Tarantino in the one vampire movie where he like writes a scene and makes what's her face pour tequila in his mouth through her foot.
Oh yes,
just and puts
Salma
himself
Hayek.
in as Salma Hayek. Yes,
Yep.
It's like that was a necessary scene. Tarantino. Yeah, that was a good choice. Yeah.
Well, this is one of those things where when actually, Tarantino didn't direct it. His buddy did. What's his buddy's name? Anyway, that's the privilege of being closely related to the guy who's actually making, or on good terms with the guy who's making the movie.
Yeah, he's but T'Pol, she's definitely, I mean, I think she's actually one of the better actors in this show, but also she is put in many scenes where she is supposed to be the sexy one.
The sexy one, yeah. And this is the point at which we find out that the reason that the aliens are mad is because Porthos peed on a sacred tree, at which Archer just loses his mind and cannot understand why anyone would be mad that his dog peed on a tree, because that apparently is what dogs do. There are places here on Earth, assumedly Archer being from Earth, that he would understand this concept, where dogs are not allowed to pee. So the fact that he can't understand why these aliens would be mad that his dog peed on their sacred tree is just
ridiculous. Yeah.
Beyond ridiculous. Especially because one of the very next lines out of anyone's mouth, and I can't remember exactly who said it, I just have no, but they point out that Archer is a trained ambassador. Really?
Oh, that was Trip. I had that noted. I was like, I laughed so hard when he said that. I was like, what kind of certification crackpot did he go through to get that listed?
Yeah, this is like the cereal box ambassadorship. Send in 5 box tops and we'll make you an ambassador.
Ambassador Crunch. Yeah.
It's like a mail order degree.
Ambassador Crunch. No, I like that. That's funny.
Yep.
Another thing I noticed, and again, this being my first episode that I was really paying attention to, is that the music, the accent music is very heavy. It's like somebody laid on to the accent music with both hands.
You're talking about like the ambiance music type?
Yeah, like when they want to punctuate a moment as a moment of tension or a moment of whatever, they've got that music cranked. It is not subtle.
I have a note about this episode that is specific to this episode.
Really?
One thing I noticed, the cinematography, and I meant to look up the director to see who it was this week, and I didn't. But like the cinematography, tone, and music of this episode are jarringly different from the rest of the series so far.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's weird. Yeah, like
yeah,
even
you're
the
not
camera
wrong.
work.
Yeah.
The camera work was clearly handheld for like a ton of the action, where normally it's a steady cam.
I agree. Yeah, I think it was a lot of it was to like make you feel more in there with them, I think.
Maybe. But yeah, it was very different.
But yeah, I did notice the same thing. I agree.
Okay. Wow. I'm kind of happy with myself for picking that up.
Yeah.
So then we're back in Sickbay, and where Phlox says he really doesn't know much about bugles. Bugles. He calls them. He says bugles. Porthos says a bugle.
Is a bugle.
And he's corrected by
Archer is very offended by it.
Which, as we will find out later, he has a good reason to be offended. But we'll get to that. And then, then Archer asks Phlox if he's qualified to work on a beagle, and he says, "Are you have a veterinary degree or a degree to work on animals?" And Phlox says, "I have several degrees in different sciences." But then it occurs to me, right, from Phlox's perspective, if you're not his species, he's basically a veterinarian for you. So
yeah,
that's true. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, he kind of whips out his his degree. Dong, I guess I'll put it, and it just reads off all. Oh, I have this degree. Now, shut up, Archer.
Yeah. Yes. And then after Phlox attempts to reassure Archer of his intent and his expertise and his dedication, Archer's basically a condescending dick and tells him he's an idiot.
That's an ongoing theme for this TV series. So
perfect.
Right on par.
Perfect.
Yep.
I like the joke about the Denobulan lemur. Oh, most have one head.
Most have one.
That was funny. And then Archer goes to sleep because he wants to be near Porthos because he can't sleep without Porthos in the bed next to him. But apparently he can sleep with the curtains drawn, so he can't actually see Porthos, who, by the way, looked like a stuffed animal at this point.
No, at that point he was definitely a stuffed animal for sure.
Yeah. And then there's a horrible noise, which turns out that to be Phlox trimming his toe claws, which
it's his cliff scalers there.
Yes, his ninja wall climbers with I think some sort of a laser beam. I'm not quite sure.
I was gonna say, I bet you the younger Stanford would appreciate those. He hates nail clippers now.
No, that is correct. And then we move on to other sight gags. Phlox scraping his tongue with much drool.
That was
his giraffe tongue.
Oh God, it was terrible.
It was horrifying. But you know what? He's not human, so I'll give him a pass on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Doc feeds various pieces of his body that he no longer needs to the critters he's got.
His toe clippings, yeah.
And then Archer goes to bed. End of scene, and then we move on to Act 2, boobs. We go to the gym and immediately pan over to Paul's boobs, which apparently is one of the primary driving factors of this whole series, I guess, is to Paul's boobs.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Man, I feel like this is going to become a thing for the podcast now. We just point it out every time.
Well, you could add that to the bingo card. Slow pan over to Paul's boobs.
Well, that'll be season 3.
I was going to say, that'll replace our horny square for the free middle square.
So then we get into a discussion about why Archer is so wrapped around the axle about having to apologize and them being mad and so on and so forth. And we find out that the reason Porthos went down to the planet was simply because Archer thought he should have an opportunity to smell some fresh air and pee on stuff. And that apparently this is his interstellar right as Archer's dog.
I mean, maybe just don't bring a dog with you on a long exploration mission where you're going to be in a ship for, long periods of time. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I think you're wacky. So then there's kind of an interesting exchange where T'Pol tries to be the adult in the room, and she says something about.
Does that count for bingo? Because I mean, you specifically said that T'Pol is the adult in the room, and that's a bingo.
I would say yes.
All right, continue. Sorry.
That's okay. No, so she's trying to point out that Archer is letting his feelings for his dog get in the way of his professional responsibilities, which is absolutely spot on. Here's basically the character being completely wrapped around the axle and ignoring, abdicating his duties as a trained ambassador just because his dog got sick. And I say just because. I've had dogs. Dogs are our companions. I get it. But by the same token, he should be looking at the bigger picture. So...
Absolutely. And I think my favorite part of T'Pol's kind of conversation with Archer is where she just directly points out that he ignores the consequences of his actions, which is another ongoing Archer theme throughout the series. And I was like, oh, God, thank you for just saying it. Yeah. Like, just out there.
She has not said this before because, we're 2 seasons in?
Not so directly. No.
Yeah, this is the first time that those words have been uttered. She's like called him out on his bullshit before, but not this directly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's a lot changing in this episode, I think. And then we cut to Hoshi, who is the deck officer, I guess, at this point, and she is talking to the aliens, and she collects their demands. And then, again, the heavy music. I actually have a note, music. So apparently the music was, again, rather ham-fisted. Then we go back to sickbay, and Porthos is in shock. And Phlox directs Archer to go get 5 cc's of blue and inject it into Porthos. At which point, several of us here watching it pointed out that half of the medicines were blue.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he has some minor medical training. He got the right one, apparently. So.
He did, yep. Porthos did not die any harder than he was already dying, so we accomplished that mission. And again, Archer continues to be a tool bag. He is now basically minimizing the importance of plasma injectors, which, keep in mind that the Enterprise needs to go anywhere, because I think he said we can get 9 light years with the plasma injectors we have. How far is that really?
Right, like where's that going to get you exactly?
Yeah, that's like saying I have to get to Philly. I've got 20 miles worth of gas. Yeah.
Yeah, until you hit the traffic on 95.
Yeah, right. Or get jammed up on the Schuylkill. And so he's basically there's this dynamic at play between plasma injectors and stellar relationships. And oh, by the way, Archer's dog. So.
Yeah. Well, I just want to point out right now that you definitely, and you and Stanford both have the same exasperated sigh. So
yes,
it's like you're related.
Just like we've been like in close proximity for many, many years.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So then, Phlox, in his using yet another of his many degrees, points out that Archer needs to get laid.
I mean, that's top-notch psychiatry right there. I don't know what you're talking about.
Straight from Freud.
I think it's on page 1 of the book. Human psychology. They need sex. Okay, well, done. Okay, there it is.
And I mean, I think it's mentioned in this episode too, but Phlox's species, the Denobulans, are polyamorous. So, I mean, sex probably a pretty common solution for most of the Denobulan problems, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I thought the little conversation he had about how he's got 3 wives and each of them has...
3 husbands.
2 husbands? 3 husbands?
It's 2 other husbands.
Yeah, he goes through all the different potential combinations of them, and I forget if it was at this point or later on in the episode. He even comments that he misses some of their husbands too. Yeah, being away from them.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely see that. I mean, if that is the nature of the relationships that you're let's call it culture has, then, you might as well get along with everybody in your extended family to the best of your ability. So yeah, absolutely. And then let's see. So then we cut back to Hoshi is again doing Archer's job by talking to the aliens.
Yep.
and then that's the end of Act 2. So then after a short break, we're moving right into Act 3, bats. Or
bats.
Actually, yeah. So.
Not freaking bats?
Yeah. And actually, the bat was kind of adorable, as it turned out.
I wrote that down too.
But Phlox has an origami swan that he is using as a decoy of some sort, although he was intended to frighten the bat, but instead, in keeping with the overall theme of this, the underlying theme of this episode, the bat decides it wants to hump it and flies over and jumps right on it. So, but there was several moments of chasing a bat around in the sickbay.
Yeah, it was. I think my note for this is a cartoon. It's just like Archer's swiping his bat or whatever he had, knocking stuff off the shelves, goo falling on Phlox. It was a cartoon.
It was wildly overacted. Like the swiping with the net was just obscene.
And then during the whole bat hunt, Phlox again points. Well, he actually goes more to the point where he says, "I think your problem is you're horny for T'Pol," and at this point, I was just like, "This has ceased to be even a semi-serious drama and has now moved into 90s sitcom territory, right? Because we have the horrifyingly trite plot device of, oh, you're just fighting because you're really attracted to that person."
Oh God, yes, yeah. It's so just cliche and sexual tension. Yeah, you want to bang.
It's Saved by the Bell in space, frankly. Is what we got
going
on
I was going to say, this is like an after-school special sitcom.
With bats. And then
bats.
Hoshi opens the door, and immediately the bat just flies right to her and falls asleep in her hand. And so Hoshi is apparently the bat master.
Expert bat wrangler, yep.
Yep. And it's just amazing she did not actually grab his wings with a pair of chopsticks.
Yeah, I was actually, I had thought about that likeness in the, when I was watching, I'm like, Jesus, just right into her hand.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So we move on from the bats. We move on from the bats and we move into a scene which I immediately knew was a dream because it just didn't look anything like the rest of the show. And it's raining like hell. And we're in a pet cemetery.
Right. Oh, God.
So all those graves are empty.
Yeah.
So here's a nightmare where Porthos has died, and despite and there's a mention of his love of cheese. So I guess Porthos eating cheese is a thing.
It's been referenced a number of times. Yes.
Okay. And then it turns into this horrifyingly awkward sex dream.
Back in the decon, rundown chamber.
Yeah. And again, so much fur after Porthos leaves. Yep. And then after an interminable 30 seconds, if that, of awkwardness, it's just horrible.
It was rough.
Yep. Archer wakes up and seems like he needs a clean pair of shorts.
Yeah.
I have a question for the Captain's Log supplemental veterans on the podcast. Does this count as Archer falls in love?
I don't think so. I mean, there's a difference between, love and wants to bang.
I mean, is there for Archer, though?
That's fair.
Our official ruling is no.
Okay, that was what I was leaning towards.
Come on.
It's on my bingo card, too, just so you know, and I was leaning towards no for that one.
That's going to get me a whole row when we hit it.
he can't possibly love anyone as much as he loves that dog.
Oh, you didn't see the creepy... What was that thing? Was it like a slime monster? I don't remember. From season 1?
You mean the jizz monster?
With the hunt, where they were hunting?
I was talking about the hunt.
The sexy space snail.
Oh
snail,
gosh,
that's what
you
it was,
guys were describing that, and I was just like, had the all over body willies. So, right. So there's this discussion with Phlox about how important Porthos is to Archer. And this is the point at which he says he got Porthos from his ex-girlfriend's mom's beagle because they kept in touch. And at that point, I'm thinking, he kept in touch with the beagle?
Right. I thought the same thing when I was hearing it.
And then he goes, and as soon as the beagle was pregnant, she called me. Like,
did you get it pregnant?
So basically, Porthos is Archer's love child.
Yep, it was a beagle. Uh-huh. Yep. That was how I heard it.
Okay, it wasn't just me then, and the local audience here. So after Archer explains this rather revealing backstory, T'Pol brings food. So I guess if you had food on your bingo, there you go. And then, slipping immediately back into 90s sitcom territory, Archer makes these just awkward, stupid faux pas where he says, "I'm doing the best I can. I mean, the best I can."
The Freudian slips. Oh God.
Yeah. Oh God. It was just so. And here's the thing: not only was it just horrible scripting, but it was horribly executed. I mean,
it's bad.
So I will, full disclosure, I have not seen a lot of Bakula. I've seen a couple of episodes of Quantum Leap. I've seen now 2 episodes of this, and I don't know that I've ever seen him in anything else. But from what I've seen, the guy is not a great actor.
So the acting, I watched a good amount of Quantum Leap, and it's the same from Quantum Leap to Star Trek in my estimation. Like no difference really in his acting. So
we're calling that acting.
Yeah, I mean it worked okay in Quantum Leap because it's kind of there's just that kind of show, but like
Quantum Leap was supposed to be campy. This is not supposed to be as campy as it's turning out to be.
And it's not just that, but keeping in mind that Bakula, at least the 3 or 4 episodes of Quantum Leap I saw, Bakula was only on screen for a portion of the time, right? Because there was some other actor that he had jumped into.
That's true.
Yeah. So I'm wondering why he got this part. But there it is.
Yeah.
So Phlox. So at this point, after Archer embarrasses himself and frankly the entire cast and crew of the show, T'Pol leaves and Phlox continues to go on about how Archer just wants to bang her and probably should. And all at this point it was like, someone please shut him up.
Yeah, they're really hitting it home. I mean, it's that's.
Yep. And then it's during this scene we find out that Phlox has like an entire zoo in Sickbay.
Yeah, well, this is if you haven't seen other episodes, that is something you wouldn't know coming in. But yeah, it is referenced. It was actually one of the things on our bingo card too. Is he interacts with his menagerie?
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he has a number of creatures for various medical purposes.
Okay,
we saw leeches 2 episodes ago, I think, in the minefield one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, leeches are valid. We have leeches in hospitals here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, and then there's a discussion about people and dogs. And I get this because, as dogs have been our companions for 30,000 years, and they are evolved basically to be our companions. And we are actually have evolved to have them as our companions, right? We each have portions of our brain that only react to the other. Being human in an important way means liking dogs. So Phlox doesn't get that, and I get it. But by the same token, Archer doesn't seem to get the big picture because he's still going on about this dog in the face of, as I said, interstellar relations. So,
yeah, Archer cares about Archer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's very telling. Phlox calls dogs subservient quadrupeds because, like, it's not something that another alien species, to your point, could really relate to the way we can.
Right. And that is the end of the act. Then after a short break, we return for Act 4. Porthos is wet. Archer is horny.
I mean...
So as we get into this, they're trying to deal with Porthos's problem, and Archer figures out that he needs to, not Archer, Phlox figures out he needs to implant that Porthos' pituitary gland has
disintegrated, which is like, oof.
And Dr. Mariah is like, you can live without a pituitary gland, and but apparently he can't. So Phlox finds a pituitary gland in some random lizard he's got laying around, and he's going to implant it into Porthos.
I want to just take a moment here to just straight murder in this other animal to save another one. I mean, I wonder about the ethics of this.
Yeah, well, I love that Archer's totally okay with it too. He's like, it's just a lizard.
It's just a lizard. Although there was the mention that Porthos might pick up chameleon powers because it's actually a chameleon, right? So I was like, that would be cool. That would be cool. So then we go to the scene where Porthos is floating in this tank and he looks dead as hell.
Yeah, it's very dead looking. Got like a hole in his head and everything.
And Phlox is doing his thing, and he and Archer are discussing various aspects of Phlox's life, actually. So for the first time in this entire show, but in this particular episode, Archer is considering someone else's point of view and kind of has an epiphany, shows a little empathy, which, as we will find out later, kind of leads him down not the primrose path, but the correct path.
Mm-hmm.
And he, at this point, actually goes to Paul and apologizes to her sincerely for what was he apologize to her for?
Well, I think because he didn't get to. Did he get to her before? I say we had the surgery, and then Archer decided that it was a good idea to talk about his sexual attraction during the surgery, which
that's right,
which was interesting.
I see your my dog has a hole in his head, and you've got instruments going in and out, but I want to talk about my boner.
It's like, yeah, I gotta take care of this. Phlox does tell him not to pursue it at that point, which, I mean, okay, cool. He did. He apologized to Phlox for being a dick, which he was. And then Phlox mentioned
he apologized to Phlox. Yes.
Right. And then he goes on his apology tour from there. He mentioned that to Paul mentioned Archer is incapable of apologizing, which, I mean, up till this point, pretty accurate.
Right. And, by the way, I think in an earlier scene, there was some mention of what Archer had to do to make it up to the aliens.
Right.
And there was I think it was Hoshi said, do we even have a chainsaw?
Right.
Yeah. So, right. So nice little, what would you need a chainsaw for?
Right.
So, short break. And then back with Act 5, I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay.
I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay.
So at this point, Archer is naked again. Well, he's wearing a sweater, but other than that, he's naked.
Well, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And he has an awesome future chainsaw. That is the Starfleetiest chainsaw I've ever seen in my life.
It did look pretty slick.
Yeah. And he's making walnut bowls. I guess that's part of the ritual.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing a haka dance, I guess, and speaking what sounds a lot like Klingon, but that's that's to my ear.
It's an interesting apology ritual. They were happy with whatever he did, though, I guess.
They were.
I like that he had notes on a little tablet that he kept with him.
Yeah, his phone. I was like, oh, he's got notes on his phone. Which they did not seem to mind that he like looked at his cheat sheet, but that's okay. It's the effort, right?
So yeah, exactly.
And then, they smile, which is an interesting thing because all aliens in Star Trek smile. Because obviously humans smile. So if aliens wiggled their ears when they were happy, we wouldn't get it.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. So then we're back on the ship, and Archer's in his. Where is he? I can't remember. He's in the sickbay again?
I think he's just in his
room.
In his room, I think his quarters or something like that. Yeah.
And this is when he apologizes to Paul.
Right.
So and the thing that I noticed at the beginning of the scene was they kind of almost sort of had the Star Trek door noise from TOS. Only it was a little weird, but good effort.
Huh.
And then we find out that Archer would like to give to Paul an apology. And of course, by apology, he means his penis.
Yeah. Uh-huh. His apology penis, though. I mean, that's...
Yes, I would like to apologize so hard to you.
He wants to give her a very personal apology.
He wants to apologize on the inside.
Exactly. That's where it counts.
And all I could think of when I saw the scene was, oh God, here it comes. And then, there's this awkward kind of like, right. So these are, I would say, two grown adults.
Just like weird, terrible, flirty energy going on.
Exactly. Yeah. T'Pol gets all throaty and flirty, and again back to Saved by the Bell. Uh-huh. It was just painful.
T'Pol shuts him down so hard, I cringed for Archer.
Was that what happened?
No, that is not what I got out of that at all.
I think I did not interpret it that way. I interpreted it as like she left it open like something might happen.
She did.
I did not.
Yeah, go rewatch the scene. Like her last sentence,
right?
She says something to the effect of, having a relationship between the executive officer and the captain would not be a good idea. So we shouldn't. Or something to that effect.
Like Archer brings up the fact that like these tensions are worse when it's the opposite sex, and then like she says something weird about like, oh yeah, well it's a good thing because otherwise we'd be banging it out if we weren't a subordinate officer. That's how I interpreted what her line was.
That's what I got out of it as well. So then after we're done with Nickelodeon flirt night. Mm-hmm. We're going to move on to Porthos, who still looks very dead, actually.
He's just sleeping. It's fine.
He is just sleeping. And then we open the thing, and he leaps out, the best boy in Starfleet, back on his feet. And I was really, at this point, hoping he would turn blue against Archer's uniform. I was very disappointed he did not.
That would have been fun.
Yes.
And we end the episode with a nice, creepy flock smile.
Bingo.
Creepy flock smile.
I was going to say, if anybody, I think that was one of our bingo squares, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I didn't have that one on mine, so.
So at this point, I believe I'm supposed to call for ratings.
Okay.
So on a scale of 1 to 5, where 0 is threshold, and I will be honest, I have not seen Threshold.
Glad.
I asked Matthew how it compared with the Alternative Factor, which is considered to be the worst episode of TOS, and he could not answer. So I was very torn because in context, I don't know how good or bad of an episode this was. However, in the context of TOS, I didn't care for it. I thought it would have been a poor TOS episode, but my complaint about it compared to TOS is I just don't care I just don't like the characters, mostly Archer, actually.
Well, yeah. So did you have a rating? Do you want to start out?
I'm just going to call it. But so, right. I was going to finish by saying that in context of the other types of shows I tend to watch right now, this is garbage. It is so bad.
The brutal honesty.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm watching there's some great stuff on Netflix and Apple TV and
I would say that TV in general now has much more interesting storylines in general than TV did at that time of the show. So
I will give this a 3 to be polite.
Oh wow. Okay. Wow. The 3 that's like middle of the road. I mean,
is it?
If you're calling it garbage, I mean, you don't hold back.
I thought it was garbage, but I mean, in context, all right, I'll give it a 2. I'll split the difference.
Okay, so I agree. I'll go with the 2. As you said, Archer was just extra Archer this episode and super just unbearable and annoying to listen to. The dialogue in general was terrible. The only thing that saves it from a 1 for me is I think the core idea of this episode is an interesting one, and could make for an actually good episode if they had actually written a decent one. But
what core idea is that?
Just like, it's more, I would say, like character study between of the actual characters themselves, rather than things are happening, problems are occurring, and people are having to deal with it, which kind of happens in this episode, but that's more of the standard Star Trek thing. Like, anomaly pops up, people attack, something like that. This is more so just Archer learning to deal with his own shit. And I think that could be an interesting episode, but it just was written badly. So, 2.
Yeah, and still instead you got the skits from a sex ed class.
Yeah.
Oh boy, like this was a fun episode, but for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
Like I was more laughing at the episode, like the absolute ridiculousness of it all, than I was like appreciating anything that happened here. I was gonna give it a 1, to be honest. Like I felt like this whole episode existed to establish this like relationship between Archer and T'Pol as quickly as possible. Like, I have not seen the rest of Enterprise. This is my first blind watch through, but like, I got to imagine this is going to be a thing at least this season.
You would think.
Okay. But
I don't remember it ever developing into anything.
That is wild.
As a matter of fact, and I think I mentioned this before, like the only relationship T'Pol ever has with anybody is with Trip, and I think it happens in the 3rd season. So
okay. I think it mostly happens to the decon chamber, doesn't it?
Well, that's the place.
I would say for just wedging this in here in a single episode, it's definitely a 1 from me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame you.
This is, I think, the worst episode we've seen so far.
Oh my gosh! Lucky me.
It's pretty bad. It's right up there.
All right. Well, there it is. Somebody want to take us into the break?
Nope, I think that's fine. When we come back, we are going to do our deep dive on the episode.
Hi, welcome back to Captain Log Supplemental. We're going to go into the deep dive now, and this week's deep dive is going to be about Starfleet command organization and relationships. So to start off, let me say that I just retired from a military career that encompassed 30 years of service over 40 years of my life, and I have worked in command levels up to division. So I'm pretty familiar with how the current and active military does organization and command relationships. I did some research into how the Navy does it, because they do things a little bit differently. Let's keep in mind, as we start off on this, that this is an episodic television show. So a lot of the things I'm going to point out as being kind of weird or crazy are just driven by the requirements of having a small subset of characters that you can call upon to do things all the time. This is the classic, and it continues to this day. This is the classic, okay, we're going to beam half the primary bridge crew down to the planet to go check out the dangerous monster. And plus 2 random guys wearing red shirts who are probably going to get eaten. Because the audience has to have somebody they know and care about getting into danger. So, with that in mind, Let's start by talking about how the Navy actually organizes things currently. So the command structure on a ship is divided into departments, and each department will have a head. And the several departments, and they do vary depending on what kind of vessel it is, what the mission of that vessel is. But they are navigation, and navigation is in charge of the safe navigation and piloting of the vessel. They have an operations department, and the operations department is in charge of things like combat information, electronic warfare, intelligence, and the weather. And when I say intelligence in the military does not mean things you know. It means things you know about the enemy. Intelligence is specifically concerned with knowing and understanding how the enemy fights its wars and what they are likely to do. The next department is supply, and supply is in charge of things like food, stores, and paying sailors. Next department is engineering. Engineering is in charge of the hardware, the equipment that makes up the vessel, propulsion, your machinery, and machinery covers everything else down there. Like on a ship, you're going to have machines that make fresh water. They're going to have machines that make electricity. There's even on a big enough vessel, you'll have like steam irons, these big flat steam things that are actually powered by ship's steam, which is kind of cool. Engineering is also in charge of damage control, and it is also in charge of the things that we would consider life support, which is like HVAC, water, fresh water, things like that. The other department that ships will have is what's called weapons department, the deck department, or the combat department, depending on what the mission of the ship is. So if your ship is an aircraft carrier, it will probably have a deck department. If it's a cruiser or a destroyer, it's going to have a weapons department. And if it's a command ship, it's probably going to have a combat department. And these are people that are associated with supporting those particular aspects of the mission. So each department has a head, and the head is a senior officer. And depending on how big the department is, they will have subordinate officers in charge of smaller subsections or subdepartments within their department. Like the engineering department will have a propulsion officer, and it'll have a damage control officer, and it'll have a machinery spaces officer, so on and so forth. Now, the captain is obviously in charge of the ship, and he makes decisions, big decisions. He receives his orders, says, okay, the command says, this is your mission, Captain. He goes, okay, I know what I need to do. And he provides instruction to the crew about the big picture thing. We are going here, and once we get here, we are going to do this. And he has an executive officer, and the executive officer's job is to basically execute, is to make things happen. The executive officer is basically the cat herder, the whip cracker. He is the one that will work more directly with the department heads to make sure that the things that are needed to do to support the mission, the captain's intent and instructions and general desires, are executed by those department heads to make sure that that those things get done without the captain having to step down and get into the weeds himself. That is not the captain's job. So all that being said, the Army and the other services have what's called, and the Navy does to a degree as well, but keep in mind the ship is a kind of a different animal because it is a single entity as far as combat operations are concerned. You don't move around individual people when you're considering a ship. You don't say, well, I've got these 5 guys are going to go do this and these 20 guys are going to do this. You say this ship is going to go do this as a whole. So at higher levels of organization, the military uses what's called the general staff model. And the general staff breaks down into 6 core staff sections, and they are numbered G1 through G6. On a joint staff, and a joint staff is a staff that has multiple services in it. So if you have an operation that includes the Army and the Air Force, they'll have a J staff. If it's just the Army, it's a G staff, and if it's the Air Force, it's an A staff, so on and so forth. And those staff sections are G1 is personnel, G2 is intelligence, and again, intelligence is deals with knowing how the enemy fights. G3 is operations, and operations is the staff section that is in charge of creating and disseminating orders to subordinate units. And those orders are the breakdown of what those units are going to do in order to accomplish their piece of the overall mission. G4 is logistics, and of course that's supplies. That's all your stuff, beans, bullets, and Band-Aids. G5 is civil military affairs, because the military does nothing in a vacuum. There's always civilians in the area or that need to be interfaced with. So depending on the operation you're doing, civil military affairs has different roles. Maybe it's to make sure the civilians stay out of the way of the fighting. Maybe it's to help the civilians reestablish their local government after the fighting's over, or in lieu of fighting. We have civil support operations. And finally, you've got G6, which is signals. Signals is C3I, right? Command, control, communications, and computers. So C4, right? So it's all the electronic stuff that allow us to talk, and the equipment that supports the digital infrastructure. So all that being said, what do we have in Star Trek? Well, we have... Any questions so far?
No, very informative.
Okay. I'm actually kind of surprised at how similar Star Trek is to real world military in a lot of ways. Well, there's a lot of overlap.
So a couple of things that are interesting there, right? So Star Trek, obviously, Gene Roddenberry was the guy who set all this up. He was an Air Force, not Air Force. He was an Army officer. He was a bomber pilot in World War II. So he had military experience, so he kind of had some background. But again, as I mentioned earlier, the need for recurring and known characters in episodic television kind of dictated a weird command setup in Starfleet.
Yeah.
So like one of the biggest examples is you've got tactical and security, right? Which... I'm not sure why those two things would be together. Tactical is concerned with weapons that shoot out of the ship. Security is concerned with things that shoot inside the ship, I guess.
That's just the aggressive department is what it is.
Yeah. They like to punch things.
It's the aggro team.
Yep.
Meanwhile, you've got an operations section in Starfleet, which as far as I can tell is basically HVAC and plumbing. It seems more to do with ship operations than the operations of the ship, if that makes sense.
They got to clean out the biofilter on the holodeck.
Exactly. Are we going to get into the holodeck here? Because I'm not really ready for that.
Oh, no. That's a whole nother matter.
Yes, it is. And then you got your sciences department, which is an interesting thing. And that speaks to Starfleet's exploration mission.
Right.
So there's no real direct equivalent to that. So I can respect that. Then you've got an engineering department. And I would say that of the ways Starfleet slices and dices responsibility, engineering is the closest to what we would recognize as engineering. And then finally, there's this concept of a command group.
Right.
People are in the command track or they're not, which is completely anathema to how the military in general approaches developing commanders, right? Most officers will at one point or another, if they stay in service long enough, have the opportunity to command. So command is it's an officer function, not a departmental function. So you end up with some weird animals, some weird roles, I guess would be the better way to say it, in Starfleet. So and Starfleet has officers to do everything, right? Obviously, that is a very strange a very strange setup that doesn't have an equivalent anywhere else ever, as far as I can tell. And I guess I'm not sure exactly why they do it, although they do talk about crewmen, but you never really see any. I guess in TOS, it's those guys in the blue suits, that the blue jumpsuits that wander around and seemingly do nothing.
Yeah, we've discussed this in previous episodes before, but they don't get mentioned much, and like Lower Decks is kind of puts the spotlight on that a bit more than the other episodes do, but they are there. They're just kind of, unseen.
Right. And no, like, it seems like everybody on the ship is an officer. They're an ensign or a lieutenant or whatever. And that's just not, like, consider that the job of a helmsman, right? A helmsman's job is literally to steer the ship. That is his job. It's to point the ship in this direction. And, the helmsman doesn't even call for power on a traditional Earth nautical vessel, wet Navy vessel. He just steers it. Somebody else tells the ship how fast to go. But in Starfleet, a helmsman has a lot more to do and is an officer. And if you look at one of the helmsman's duties is tactical. Sulu was firing the phasers all the time. That was his job. But in reality, he should be maneuvering the ship, not shooting the weapons. But, again, you're not going to trot out Lieutenant Nobody every time they want to, shoot phasers at the Klingons or whoever. We'll just have Sulu do it. It'll save time, and we have to pay less people. So there's no way around it. It's weird, but by the same token, there's no way around it because it's television.
Right. Yep. You gotta. Yeah. We have to invest in the people we care about, and it's just the regular military structure is not as conducive to writing a TV show.
No, it is not. No. So even in TV shows that notionally deal with the actual military, you see much the same kind of things going on, where you'll see just a small handful of characters that do all the things. And that's not how life works.
Right.
But life is not television.
I would be curious, like you had mentioned the science officers kind of being unique because of the situation they're in. On like Starfleet's purpose-built war vessels, do they also have science officers on those?
That's a good question. I would think not. I mean, like the Defiant is probably the more well-known of a purpose-built for combat ship in the Star Trek universe, and I got the impression watching Deep Space Nine that there was no science section on that ship. So
you just have a Romulan on board to let you stealth.
Yep, that's it.
Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Yes. If you have a Romulan.
Yep.
So, all the discussions of structure being complete at this point, let's talk about command relationships. So, Matthew has, in some of his discussions in previous episodes, talked about how he thought that the most correct model for a command relationship was TOS, and that Strange New Worlds was a completely unrealistic command relationship. I tend to disagree. I disagree. I'll just flat up say I disagree. Yeah, and that's based on my experience. Again, 30 years, of service, and I'm going to say that it comes down to the personality of the commander and and of his people. However, one thing Matthew is correct on, and this may be what he intended to say, but just didn't say it. He may have said it, but a commander will only have a handful of confidants, right? People he can confide in, people he can express more personal thoughts and ideas and questions to. A commander may go to dinner, I've had commanders do it, take some of their junior officers to dinner occasionally. Hey, we're all going to get together. And, that way he can get to know them, they can get to know him a little better, and that hopefully smooths out some of the working relationships. But he's not going to go to those junior officers and talk about trepidations he may have, or concerns he may have, or even personal problems he may be having. A commander's gonna have just a couple of confidants, and TOS does this very, very well. Kirk has 3 confidants, really 2, primarily primarily Spock and McCoy, to a lesser degree Scott, and he is personable with his other officers, but he never expresses personal concerns or what's the word I'm looking for? When he's not sure about something, or things that are he doesn't get that personal with anyone other than really Spock and McCoy. Now, I would say that is also true of at least the other 2 captains, which I've watched in some detail, which is Pike and who's the captain of Cerritos? Carol.
Mariner? No.
Freeman.
Freeman, yeah.
Freeman. Captain Freeman. They only Pike confides very closely with his first officer, and I think that's about it.
I'm trying to think now.
Freeman will confide in Ransom and I think Shax, and that may be about it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah, Pike, he gets buddy, like he does like the dinner things and stuff like that, but I think you're right in saying that he doesn't personally confide in any of the other officers besides Spock.
Right. Yeah. And if you look at Pike's closest relationship, the person he confides in the most is his girlfriend, that other ship captain, which is absolutely appropriate, because who else knows better the things he goes through, and that he can share and get ideas and even just some reassurance that he's on the right track, doing the right thing, and vice versa, right, for her.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about it before, but Archer, as much as Pike, we jokingly call him Captain Daddy, and he's super friendly with his whole staff. I feel like Archer is more guilty of that, but it's in a very uncomfortable way.
So
he doesn't hold anything back. He tells everyone everything.
Right. And I was just about to go there. And again, this episode being a standout episode for how much of a petulant little bitch Archer is, that is completely inappropriate for a commander to express that level of frustration with junior officers, like Hoshi, for instance. He can have that conversation with DePaul. She is his executive officer. He can maybe even have that conversation with Tripp, as he is the chief engineer, and a very senior position on the ship, but and of course with Phlox, right, the medical officers, or if there was there's no chaplain as far as we can see in Star Trek, Starfleet, but if there was, a medical officer chaplain would be an appropriate kind of person to confide in. But for him to express that level of frustration at Hoshi, completely inappropriate. And part of that, again, isn't so much, it's a problem of television, but it's a problem of television being written by people who don't understand how that works. I'm sure there was a way to write that scene where he wasn't basically up in Hoshi's face about the stupidity of those aliens. That's absolutely inappropriate. But, there it is. So that's about all I got for this. Any questions or thoughts?
No, very interesting. I always thought that there was definitely obviously going to be some differences between Star Trek and real life military organizational kind of chains and how things operate. So definitely interesting to hear kind of that more firsthand experience. Not being in the military, it's always only exposure we get to it is what Hollywood and TV shows say, and obviously that is often exaggerated or completely wrong. So interesting to see. I think more interesting, even for me, is how people tend to interact with those under their command, whether it's more friendly or more, shut off and cold.
I think it's also kind of interesting. I never really thought about it from like your take of it. It's just like a storytelling mechanism, but it makes sense because like you look at really popular franchises that have been turned into movies like Lord of the Rings. Everybody was super upset that Tom Bombadil didn't make it into the movies.
Oh, I was
nobody
not.
I was just going to say, like, nobody can deny the fact that he did nothing to move that plot along.
So he kind of did, because, we're not going to get into the Lord of the Rings. I can hear Matthew sighing heavily behind me here. So I'll wait for the Lord of the Rings rewatch podcast.
There you go.
But let me just say, there is no one right way for a commander to be or interact with his people. It's based strictly on not strictly, but it's based largely on the commander, on the people, on the mission, on the situation, so on and so forth. So,
makes sense.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that'll wrap up our segment, and when we come back, Rob will come in with some potpourri.
Welcome back, everybody, to this week's potpourri section, which I am affectionately titling "Whose Pet Is That?"
Okay.
So I thought that this would be a good week to go through some famous pets from Star Trek, and I'm going to give you the name and ask you who it belonged to.
Oh boy. Okay.
All right. First up, Neelix.
But hold on. Are we? Neelix is a person.
Uh-huh.
He was also somebody's pet?
He was also somebody's pet. I can give you a hint if that helps.
Please.
I will give you the species. Cat.
Oh, God, I have no idea. Wow.
Y'all are lucky I am not on this quiz right now.
I'm assuming you know who it is, right?
100% I know who it is.
Okay, good. Yeah, this is Reginald Barclay's cat. From he's in both TNG and Voyager. I think he gets it in Voyager.
Yeah, Barclay didn't have a cat in TNG.
Yeah, he named it after Neelix.
Oh, okay.
Oh, huh. Okay. I saw maybe 6 episodes of Voyager. Maybe not even that many.
I had forgotten about that, honestly. Okay.
You might have seen a few more than me then, Chief. I also did not watch much. Okay, next up, Christina.
Jesus. What kind of animal is it?
This is a Lycosian tarantula.
Oh boy. Ooh. I don't know. Worf.
Do you know, Chief?
I have no idea.
It belongs to Chief Miles O'Brien.
Huh. Wow, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, the story was O'Brien was scared of spiders, and then when he almost stepped on one on, I think it's Titan, or not like Earth Titan, different Titan, he decided to rescue it, and it got him over his fear of spiders. They show it off in one episode.
One episode of
TNG.
what?
TNG.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I guess I will warn you, this is also a Voyager example coming up next. Molly.
Is that Janeway's dog, maybe?
Chief?
I have no idea.
It is Janeway's dog. It's her Irish setter.
Yes, okay. I vaguely recalled that.
She had a dog on the show, or just like...
I think she spoke of the dog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she had a picture of him. I think you do see him in at least one episode. I remember seeing a clip where, like, I think it's her husband taking care of him, or her.
Janeway had a husband?
Yes, yeah, I recall that now. Now that you're saying that, yes, okay.
Yeah, they talk about how at one point she has a litter.
Janeway or the dog?
The dog has a new litter.
Well, I mean, speaking of threshold.
yeah. I mean, Janeway has definitely been turned into other species, so not out of the question. Anyway, next up, Livingston.
Animal?
These are all animals.
No. What kind of animal?
Lionfish.
Is that Picard's?
Yeah, you guys both got it. That's Picard's lionfish.
Okay. I honestly did not remember him having a name, but I did remember he had a lionfish.
But I remember he had a lionfish, yep.
Yeah, it's the little lionfish in his ready room. You both will probably know this one. Spot.
Oh, it's Data's cat.
Oh, it's Data's cat, yeah.
Yep, TNG.
Up is down is good, up is no.
I'm going to assume that Chris isn't going to know this one, but Chief, you might. Beauregard.
Beauregard was a who was that? Was that Sulu? It was a plant.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Oh.
It was, I want to say it was Sulu's, and I can picture it. I just can't remember who was calling it in the episode. It didn't like the salt vampire.
Yeah, you're right. That's exactly what it was. So it was Yeoman Rand.
Rand. Okay, that's right. Rand. Okay.
Yeah, Sulu gave it a different name, but Rand called him Beauregard. It was the carnivorous plant.
Which was obviously a hand.
Moopsie.
Oh, Moopsie that wasn't anybody's pet, was it, though? That was from the one, space station that housed all the dangerous animals.
Yeah.
Moopsie drinks your bones, yeah.
I guess it's a little bit of a far-fetched to call it a pet, but kept by Narge.
Narge.
Moopsie.
And then last, Chester.
Chester.
Mm-hmm.
That's a dog. It's somebody's dog.
Nope.
No.
What kind of animal is it?
It's a cat.
Oh. I don't
it's
know.
From Deep Space Nine, if it helps.
Oh, that does not help.
Chester. Is it Keiko's cat?
Close. O'Brien's the one who winds up rescuing Chester.
So he has a tarantula and a cat?
He has a tarantula and a cat.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah.
I vaguely remember something about that.
I would give that one to you for story.
Well, yeah, you got to figure she helped take care of it, so it's her cat too.
Go. Yeah. I was researching pets from Starfleet because of this episode being very Porthocentric.
The old bugle.
All right, Stanford, were you actually keeping track of the score there?
I was.
Stanford the Younger?
Chief brought it into a tie with his Beauregard knowledge.
Yes.
Then Chris pulled ahead.
Oh, man.
But Chief does get the guest bonus, which is worth 2 points.
Oh, man.
There you go.
I don't know. I sent some more space nepotism here. I don't know.
All right. Well, I guess we'll declare Chief our victor, or guest victor for the week. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add about pets in Starfleet before we wrap it up here?
Man, we got to do the Data Spot poem, just straight up.
There's a poem?
We'll have to recite it.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. Let me look it up right now.
Oh, right now. This is a thing that's going to happen.
Ode to Spot. Felis catus is your taxonomic nomenclature, an endothermic quadruped, carnivorous by nature. Your visual, olfactory, and auditory senses contribute to your hunting skills and natural defenses. I find myself intrigued by your subvocal oscillations, a singular development of cat communications that obviates your basic hedonistic predilection for a rhythmic stroking of your fur to demonstrate affection. A tail is quite essential for your acrobatic talents. You would not be so agile if you lacked its counterbalance. And when not being utilized to aid in locomotion, it often serves to illustrate the state of your emotion. Oh, Spot, the complex levels of behavior you display connote a fairly well-developed cognitive array. And though you are not sentient, Spot, and do not comprehend, I nonetheless consider you a true and valued friend.
Aww.
And on that note, thank you everybody for joining us for another week of Captain's Log Supplemental.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Captain's Log Supplemental. You can follow us on Twitter at PodCLS or send us hate mail at podcls3@gmail.com.